$27,000. That's the average amount student loan borrowers that graduate end up owing, $27,000. But the interest rate on federal student loans is set to double this summer if Congress does not do anything about it. Enter Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren. She has introduced a bill that would give a steep temporary discount, taking the interest rate from 3.4% to under 1%. Tell me more about this bill. Why under 1%? Why not just keep it where it is?
Well, look, the bottom line is that every day the United States government lends money to big financial institutions. They've been doing it for years now. They've been doing it at about 0.75%. That's been the interest rate. We have students who are out there borrowing money to get an education, working hard. My view is if the American taxpayer is going to invest in those big financial institutions by giving them a great deal on their interest rate, let's invest in those students by giving them the same deal. That's what it's about.
Now, Elizabeth Warren has worked with MoveOn.org to get this petition rolling, and more than 300,000 people have signed the petition, which means that it does have a significant amount of support. And also, I love the way that she framed this issue, because you compare student loans to the loans that these big banks got when they destroyed our economy. So Max, first question goes to you. I mean, I know I just stated why it's a good idea, but what do you think? Do you think this is a good idea?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I mean, I have friends that are drowning in student debt, and you know, they're a few years out of college, and I just think that, like, obviously you're not comparing apples to apples because there's a lot less risk involved when the government loans to big corporations that have, you know, regular income, and people that come out of college, you know, their prospects aren't as guaranteed. But I do think that, like, education is something that we need to value and promote as a nation. And yeah, you know, it's still 1%. The government is still making money from it.
So let me jump in about what you said when it comes to risk. Student loan debt is literally the only debt that you cannot get rid of, even if you file for bankruptcy. So no matter what, throughout your entire life, you will be forced to pay back that loan. So there's very little risk, and banks know that. The federal government knows that. I just read an article today indicating that the Obama administration made $51 billion on student loan debt interest, last year alone. And that's a big problem because, look, the government is loaning out the money, and I totally understand why there's a need for that. But the government should not be making money off of these students that are drowning in student loan debt.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
You know, but also remember that the banks are also, these are taxpayer guaranteed loans. So these are a completely risk-free loan for the bank middlemen who are actually administering these loans. So they get the interest rate. They have no incentive whatsoever to agree with Elizabeth Warren on this. You know, this is part of the long-term privatization of the cost of college. You know, it did not used to be this way for anybody who was coming up before the year 2000. You know, in 2005 is when they changed the rules, making it so that you could not discharge your student loan in bankruptcy. And student loans are the second highest level of consumer debt in the United States after your mortgage. Your mortgage you can discharge in bankruptcy, I think.
Yes,
but your student loan you cannot. So this is definitely a lot of hands all in the same pot trying to profit off of students and off the privatization. I don't think there's a whole lot of incentive for these groups to agree with Elizabeth Warren, although I absolutely think she's completely right.
I definitely agree she's right, and I can totally see why the groups wouldn't want to agree with her. You know, they're looking out for their own interests. Dave Rubin, I mean, do you see this as a good fix, a good solution, or do you see this as a temporary fix?
Well, it's probably temporary if she gets it to go through, but this is the most important thing that we can possibly be doing. Education is simply, for every other reason, of every other topic that we discuss on the point, it needs the legs of education under it. And if we can give 500 million, as we did this week, to Syrian rebels, and we don't know what side they're on, if we can find that money, and we can give money all over the world to every other country, I'm pretty sure we can figure out how to do this. This is about politics, not the money, because they always find the money, and we're always willing to go more into debt to do crazy things. So this is about politics and whether we want to keep people educated or not. I hope we do.
Absolutely. I think that this is the single most important issue that you can focus on if you want to better the lives of young people. Right now, they're basically indentured servants. Okay, I was having a discussion with J.R. Jackson, legendary producer of the Young Turks, and he was telling me that he will have to pay off his student loans or pay his student loans until he's 60.
Yes.
until he's 60. And so comparing it to a mortgage is a great way of framing it, because you pay your mortgage for 30 years. It's very similar with a student loan.
Yeah, and you know, this has very important long-term economic consequences for the country. When you have essentially anyone who's in their 20s and younger is going to be committed to essentially debt slavery up until their 50s and 60s, that means they're not going to be able to afford to buy a house because they won't be able to afford that mortgage. They won't be able to have children because they will have to spend so much of their monthly pay to service this debt in the past. So I think we have long-term economic issues that I think that we need to address, and this is one of the ways that we can do it. But this is, again, only a temporary fix.
It is. Dave? Oh, I'm sorry, Max, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, I think that while we're on the topic, it is worth bringing up, at least for a little while, the utility of college in general, because I think that she, you know, obviously I'm definitely in favor of her initiative, but there was an amazing op-ed in the New York Times recently by Thomas Friedman called "Need a Job? Invent It." And it was all about how colleges really, what they, you know, they're so built upon the idea of providing students knowledge, but not so much in getting students to think critically and be innovation-minded, because that's really what's going to build the foundation of the economy of tomorrow. And you know, so I think that, like, over the long term, I'm not sure, you know, unless college sort of pivots to adjust to just the exponential rate at which things are changing all around us day by day, if students are even going to need that in the long term.
One thing that I will say is that, you know, it is really important to teach college students or high school students that your decisions in college will impact you for the rest of your life. So, you know, when I was in high school, I remember the counselors telling you, just go to college. Even if it's for a major that isn't going to get you anywhere, just go to college, right? So I remember, like, women's studies, Pan-African studies, all of those topics are interesting, and you can learn about that stuff for free online, right? As long as you go to the right sources. But at the same time, you got to do a cost-benefit analysis before you take out the loans and before you decide what you're going to study when you are in college.
Exactly. I'm not sure if today, you know, majoring in something like that is worth the $120,000 that you're going to have to pay off for 10 years after college or whatever that is. You know, like.
But also the whole experience of college is important. I would have never been as pro-weed as I am now had I not smoked that much weed in college.
Right.
So there
That's
are real-world applications that, you know, it makes you critically think.
But Max makes a good point. You know, is a college degree necessary? Will the college industry, and I call it an industry on purpose, will the industry change in time to meet how people are changing and students are changing now? But right now, if you look at the want ads, you can't get a receptionist job without a Bachelor of Arts.
And I think that that's a societal issue too. I think that this emphasis on a college degree for, like, low-skilled jobs is ridiculous, right? Like, we need to stop with that. And I get it, there's a lot of competition, especially when the economy is bad and there are so few jobs. But at the same time, I think that it's important for employers to not focus solely on where someone got their education or whether or not they got a college education. Focus on their experience and what kind of skills they can bring to the table.
Look, Zuckerberg dropped out of college.
Yeah.
There's a zillion. Bill Gates dropped out of college. I think they're doing all right.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Knowledge is ubiquitous. Like, you have all of the world's knowledge on your iPhone in your pockets right now. I mean, it's like crazy, you know? So you know, what that article said essentially was that it's not so much in creating the economy of tomorrow, it's not so much what you know, but what you can do with what you know. You know?
Absolutely. I mean, look, I got my master's degree and I ended up here. So getting an education doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get so far.